Hello, welcome back to Signatures. Today we are going to see the second part of Harold Pinter's speech, Art, Truth and Politics. So we have already seen that in the first part that it was a Nobel lecture in which he was attacking America's foreign policy and its invasion in other countries as part of what you call militarism or imperialism. Direct invasion of a sovereign state has never in fact been America's favored method. അതായത് ഒരു രാജ്യത്തേക്ക് പോയി നേരിട്ട് പോയി കടന്നു കയറി അവരെ കീഴ്പ്പെടുത്തുക എന്നുള്ളതല്ലായിരുന്നു അമേരിക്കയുടെ മെത്തേഡ്. In the main, it has preferred what it has described as low intensity conflict. Now we need to explain that what is low intensity conflict. We'll see it in the next slide. Low intensity conflict means that thousands of people die, but slower than if you dropped a bomb on them in one fell sweep. അതായത് യുദ്ധത്തിൽ ഒരു ബോംബ് ഇട്ട് കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ നമുക്ക് ആയിരക്കണക്കിന് ആൾക്കാരെ കൊല്ലാൻ പറ്റും. പക്ഷേ ഇതങ്ങനെയല്ല, വളരെ പതിയെ ആരും അറിയാതെ ആ രാജ്യത്തിലുള്ള ആൾക്കാരെ നശിപ്പിക്കുക എന്നുള്ളതാണ്. It means that you infect the heart of the country, that you established a malignant growth and watch the gangrene bloom. That means like causing a kind of cancer inside the heart of a country, and gradually it spreads throughout and destroys that nation. Gangrene means actually what you call a part of your limb or part of your body is becoming lifeless. അത് നമ്മുടെ ശരീരത്തിൻ്റെ ഒരു ഭാഗം ജീവനില്ലാതാകുന്നു, അതിനാണ് ഗാംഗ്രീൻ എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. When the populace has been subdued or beaten to death, the same thing, and your own friends, the military and the great corporations sit comfortably in power, you go before the camera and say that democracy has prevailed. So the method of America is something very interesting. Suppose in a country there are some internal problems, there can be some contrasts. കോൺട്രാസ്റ്റ് എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ നമ്മുടെ നാട്ടിലൊക്കെ മാവോയിസ്റ്റുകളുണ്ടല്ലേ, മാവോയിസ്റ്റുകൾ പൊതുവേ നമ്മുടെ ഭരണത്തിന് എതിരാണ്, ഗവൺമെൻറ്റിനെതിരെയാണ് അവർ യുദ്ധം ചെയ്യുന്നത്. അപ്പോൾ അങ്ങനെയുള്ള ഗ്രൂപ്പുകളെയാണ് കോൺട്രാസ്റ്റ് എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. അപ്പോൾ എല്ലാ രാജ്യങ്ങളിലും ഈ ഇതുപോലത്തെ ഗ്രൂപ്പ് കാണും. നമ്മുടെ കേരളത്തിൽ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഇന്ത്യയിൽ മെയിനായിട്ട് ഇപ്പോൾ കാണുന്ന ഒരു ഗ്രൂപ്പ് കോൺട്രാസ്റ്റാണ് മാവോയിസ്റ്റ്. അപ്പോൾ ഇങ്ങനെയുള്ള സിറ്റുവേഷനിൽ അമേരിക്ക എന്താണ് ചെയ്യുക? ഈ കോൺട്രാസ്റ്റിന് സപ്പോർട്ട് ചെയ്യുക, അവർക്ക് വേണ്ട ആയുധങ്ങളും പൈസയും മറ്റുള്ള കാര്യങ്ങളൊക്കെ ചെയ്തു കൊടുക്കുക. അങ്ങനെ ഈ രാജ്യത്തിനെതിരായിട്ട് ഇൻഡയറക്റ്റായിട്ട് യുദ്ധം ചെയ്യുക. അതിനാണ് ലോ ഇൻറ്റൻസിറ്റി കോൺഫ്ലിക്റ്റ് എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. So this was a commonplace in US foreign policy in the years to which I refer. So he was looking at the past and scrutinizing or investigating into the foreign policy of US government, and this is what they are doing. A commonplace means common practice, a kind of common system adopted by government, US government. The tragedy of Nicaragua was a highly significant case. I choose to offer it here as a potent example of America's view of its role in the world both then and now. So here Harold Pinter is giving an example of Nicaragua, a country where America interfered and tried to destroy it. I was present at a meeting at the US Embassy in London in the late 1980s. So Harold Pinter was present in a meeting at a US Embassy in London where they were taking some very crucial decisions. The United States Congress was about to decide whether to give more money to the Contras in their campaign against the state of Nicaragua. So in that meeting they were taking a decision whether to give more money to the Contras who are fighting against the state of Nicaragua. I was a member of a delegation speaking on behalf of Nicaragua, but the most important member of this delegation was a father, John Metcalf. So along with Harold Pinter, there was also a person from Nicaragua. His name was Father John Metcalf. The leader of the US body was Raymond Seitz. Then number 2 at to the ambassador, later ambassador himself. So this Raymond Seitz was the ambassador of America. Father Metcalf said, "Sir, I am in charge of a parish in the north of Nicaragua." So he was a parish priest of a particular parish in Nicaragua. My parishioners built a school, a health center, a cultural center. We have lived in peace. So in that particular area where this father was in charge, they had built a school, health center and also cultural center, and they were living in peace. A few months ago, a Contra force attacked the parish. So those who are fighting against the government, they attacked this parish and the people there. They destroyed everything: the school, the health center, the cultural center. So this is what the Contras did. Yeah, these Contras are definitely supported and even sponsored by the US. They raped nurses and teachers, slaughtered doctors in the most brutal manner. So this is what the Contras did. Raped the teachers and nurses, killed the doctors in a very brutal manner. They behaved like savages. Yes, definitely they were uncivilized barbarians. Please demand that the US government withdraw its support from this shocking terrorist activity. So these are the words of the father, and he was trying to tell the US people, delegates, not to support the Contras. Raymond Seitz had a very good reputation as a rational, responsible and highly sophisticated man. So this US ambassador was known to be a very decent man, responsible and highly sophisticated person. He was greatly respected in diplomatic circles, so he had a good name. He listened, paused, and then spoke with some gravity. Gravity means seriousness. "Father," he said, "let me tell you something. In war, innocent people always suffer." There was a frozen silence. We stared at him. He did not flinch. So this is the way he responded when this father was telling about the cruelties committed by the Contras, by raping the nurses, teachers and killing the doctors and all that. These are the words of US ambassador. Innocent people always suffer. Innocent people indeed always suffer. Yes. Finally somebody said, but in this case, innocent people were the victims of a gruesome atrocity subsidized by your government, one among many. Yes, here in this particular case in Nicaragua, the Contras are supported and sponsored by your government. Subsidized means given money. If Congress allows the Contras more money, further atrocities of this kind will take place. So if you continue to support them with money and weapons and all that, this kind of cruel atrocities will take place. Is this not the case? Don't you agree with this? Is your government not therefore guilty of supporting acts of murder and destruction upon the citizens of a foreign state? So don't you think that your government is guilty of supporting this kind of Contras who are inhuman beings? They have no consideration for humanity and all that. Seitz was imperturbable. He was very cool. He was not at all shaken by this. I don't agree that the facts as represented or presented support your assertions, he said. So he said this particular case may be one out of something strange. This is not something happening regularly. Maybe an exceptional case. So this particular case does not support your assertion. That's what he said. As we were leaving the embassy, a US aide told me that he enjoyed my place. So at the end, after the meeting, they were leaving. So one of the executives of US delegates, he said that he enjoyed the place written by Harold Pinter. I did not reply. So he did not give him any reply. He remained silent. I should remind you that at the time President Reagan made the following statement: the contrasts are the moral equivalent of our founding fathers. So according to President Ronald Reagan, the so-called Contras who were fighting against that government were very similar to or equal to their founding fathers of America, the people who created America. Just imagine that. The United States supported the brutal Somoza dictatorship in Nicaragua for over 40 years. So they supported this particular cruel dictator called Somoza over 40 years. The Nicaraguan people, led by the Sandinistas, overthrew this regime in 1979, a breathtaking popular revolution. So there was another party called the Sandinistas, the people's group. So they overthrew this particular dictator in 1979, which was a movement of the people, a popular revolution. The Sandinistas were imperfect. So this particular group was not perfect. They had their own problems. They possessed their fair share of arrogance, and their political philosophy contained a number of contradictory elements. So they had some kind of weakness in that group, but in spite of that, they were intelligent, rational, and civilized. They were not that bad as any dictator or dictatorship. They set out to establish a stable, decent, pluralistic society. Pluralistic means where different classes, different groups, different religions, they are all accepted. They are part of the society. The death penalty was abolished. Yes, they wanted to get rid of that death penalty. Hundreds of thousands of poverty-stricken peasants were brought back from the dead. So they tried everything to eradicate poverty, especially among the peasants. Over 1 lakh families were given title to land. So many people were landless, and they were all given land. 2,000 schools were built. A quite remarkable literacy campaign reduced illiteracy in the country to less than 1/7. So they were able to do a lot of things in the field of health, education, economy, and all that. Free education was established and a free health service. Infant mortality was reduced by 1/3. Polio was eradicated. So this government led by Sandinistas, they had done a lot of good things to the people, trying to improve their lifestyle, their economy, education, and all that. The United States finally brought down the Sandinista government. So at the end, they were thrown out of power. It took some years and considerable resistance, but relentless economic persecution and 30,000 dead finally undermined the spirit of the Nicaraguan people. So after that, the people had long suffering. Many people were killed. There was economic persecution, economic blockade. So at the end, the very spirit of the Nicaraguan people were destroyed. They were exhausted and poverty stricken once again. So they became poor again. The casinos moved back into the country. Free health and free education were over. Big business returned with a vengeance. democracy had prevailed. So according to America's stance, they had won and democracy had won, though the people were suffering. But this policy was by no means restricted to Central America. So America followed this particular policy not only in Latin American countries but also in other, even Asian countries. It was conducted throughout the world. It was never ending and it is as if it never happened. So though it took place in many countries, many media has not published it or broadcast it. Nobody even acknowledged it, as if it never happened. The United States supported and in many cases engendered every right-wing military dictatorship in the world after the end of the Second World War. So with the support of the United States, they were able to reinstate many dictators in many countries. Otherwise, without the support of the American military, such things would not have happened. Military dictatorship, not democracy, mind you. I refer to Indonesia, Greece, Uruguay, Brazil, Paraguay, Haiti, Turkey, the Philippines, Guatemala, El Salvador, and of course Chile. So these are some of the countries where America invaded indirectly by supporting the Contras and other dictators. The horror the United States inflicted upon Chile in 1973 can never be purged and can never be forgiven. So ചിലിയിൽ അരങ്ങേറിയ ക്രൂരമായ നിഷ്ഠൂരമായ കൃത്യങ്ങൾക്ക് ഒരു മറുപടി ഒന്നും നമുക്ക് പറയാൻ പറ്റില്ല. ഇറ്റ് ക്യാൻ നെവർ ബി പേർജ്ഡ്. പേർജ് മീൻസ് ശുദ്ധീകരിക്കുക. And we cannot forgive America for such atrocities. Hundreds of thousands of deaths took place throughout these countries. So millions of people were killed. Did they take place? And are they in all cases attributable to US foreign policy? So can we say that all these people were dead because of US foreign policy? The answer is yes. They did take place and they are attributable to American foreign policy. So according to Harold Pinter, we can definitely say that all these people were killed because of American foreign policy. But you wouldn't know it. We would know it because all these news were censored. No media would dare to speak about it. It never happened. Nothing ever happened. Even while it was happening, it wasn't happening. It did not matter. It was of no interest. So other countries did not bother because they are afraid of America. The crimes of the United States have been systematic, constant, vicious, remorseless. But very few people have actually talked about them. So the crimes committed by America or American military or forces, they are very systematic, constant, continuous. Vicious means evil. Remorseless means showing no regret. ദയ ഇല്ലാത്ത, അനുകമ്പയില്ലാത്ത ഒരു നിഷ്ഠൂര കൃത്യങ്ങളായിരുന്നു. But nobody ever dared to talk about all this. You have to hand it to America. Yes, we need to give 100% power to America, full, without any control. It has exercised a quite clinical manipulation of power worldwide while masquerading as a force for universal good. So whenever America attacks another country, they are telling we are doing it for good, for the good of the world, for reinstating democracy. Masquerade means പുകമറ സൃഷ്ടിക്കുക, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ മുഖംമൂടി വെച്ച് നടക്കുക. So they are pretending as if they are doing it for the universal good. It's a brilliant, even witty, highly successful act of hypnosis. Hypnosis means ഒരാളെ ഉറക്കുന്നതിനാണ് ഹിപ്നോട്ടിക്, ഹിപ്നോട്ടൈസ് ചെയ്യുക എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ ഉറക്കി കിടത്തുക, മോഹനിദ്ര എന്നും പറയാം, ഹിപ്നോസിസ്. So what America is doing is to put other people, other countries to sleep, so that they will not be aware of what is happening. So meanwhile they do their own cruel deeds on other people, just like giving anesthesia to a person and operating upon that. That's what America is doing. What has happened to our moral sensibility? Do we have the sense of right and wrong? Did we ever have any? What do these words mean? Do they refer to a term very rarely employed these days? Conscience? നമുക്കൊക്കെ മനസാക്ഷി എന്നുള്ള ഒന്ന് ഉണ്ടോ എന്നാണ് ചോദിക്കുന്നത്. A conscience to do not only with our own acts, but to do with our shared responsibility in the acts of others. So if you have got a conscience, definitely we will be looking at other people, not only our actions, whether what others are doing is right, and we should have the courage to tell what others are doing is wrong, if it is wrong. Is all this dead? So is humanity dead? Is asking. Our conscience dead? മനസാക്ഷി മരവിച്ചു പോയോ? Look at Guantanamo Bay. So this is a place in Cuba where America is having a prison where all these people suspected of terrorism are jailed there without any legal help. Once you are there, you cannot escape from there. Nobody will come to help you. So there are around 800 people were there in the beginning, but now I think the number is reduced. When new prime ministers and presidents come to power, they change the policies. Now it seems the latest president John Biden has promised to close down this particular prison. Let's see what he is going to do. So there are many without even charge. They are detained there for over 3 years with no legal representation or due process, technically detained forever. So once you are locked there, imprisoned there in a no man's land, nobody will reach there, nobody will be able to help you. You are there rotting and dying. This totally illegitimate structure is maintained in defiance of the Geneva Convention. So this Guantanamo Bay, which America is maintaining there, is totally against international law, against Geneva Convention. It is not only tolerated but hardly thought about by what is called the international community. So the international community is silent on this kind of issues. Nobody dares to talk. This criminal outrage is being committed by a country which declares itself to be the leader of the free world. So America is presenting itself as the leader of the democracy or democratic countries. And this is what they do to other human beings. Do we think about the inhabitants of Guantanamo Bay? Is anyone here really aware of that? Is there anyone to talk about these people? Nobody. What does the media say about them? They pop up occasionally, a small item on page 6. So if at all there is some news, it will be given in a corner, maybe the last page, where nobody will see that. They have been consigned to a no man's land from which indeed they may never return. So it's in a remote island in Cuba where we can't easily access to it, and they will never return from that place. At present, many are on hunger strike, being force fed. That means they are going on hunger strike, but they are being forcibly fed, including British residents. So there are people from England. No niceties in these force feeding procedures. So no manners. യാതൊരു മര്യാദയില്ലാതാണ് അവരെ ഭക്ഷണം കഴിപ്പിക്കുന്നത് നിർബന്ധിച്ച്. No sedative or anesthetic. പെയിൻ കില്ലറോ അനസ്തേഷ്യ ഒന്നും കൊടുക്കാതെയാണ് അവരുടെ മൂക്കിൽ കൂടെ ട്യൂബ് കുത്തിക്കയറ്റുന്നത്. ജസ്റ്റ് എ ട്യൂബ് സ്റ്റക്ക് അപ്പ് യുവർ നോസ് ആൻഡ് ഇൻ യുവർ ത്രോട്ട്. സോ ഭക്ഷണം കഴിക്കാത്തവർക്ക് ഭക്ഷണം കൊടുക്കാനായിട്ട് അവരുടെ മൂക്കിൽ കൂടെ ഒരു ട്യൂബ് കുത്തിക്കയറ്റണം. അപ്പോൾ ആ വേദനയൊക്കെ സഹിക്കണം അവർ. അതിന് പെയിൻ കില്ലറോ അനസ്തേഷ്യ ഒന്നും കൊടുക്കില്ല. യു വോമിറ്റ് ബ്ലഡ്, അത് വളരെ ഫോഴ്സിബിളിയാണ് ആ മൂക്കിലൂടെ കുത്തിക്കയറ്റുന്നത്. അപ്പം വോമിറ്റ് ഒക്കെ ചെയ്യും, രക്തം ഛർദ്ദിക്കും. ദിസ് ഈസ് ടോർച്ചർ. വാട്ട് ഹാസ് ദ ബ്രിട്ടീഷ് ഫോറിൻ സെക്രട്ടറി സെഡ് അബൌട്ട് ദിസ്? നത്തിങ്. വാട്ട് ഹാസ് ദ ബ്രിട്ടീഷ് പ്രൈം മിനിസ്റ്റർ സെഡ് അബൌട്ട് ദിസ്? നത്തിങ്. വൈ നോട്ട്? എന്തുകൊണ്ടാണ് ബ്രിട്ടീഷ് പ്രൈം മിനിസ്റ്ററോ ഫോറിൻ സെക്രട്ടറിയോ ഇതേപ്പറ്റി ഒരക്ഷരം മിണ്ടാത്തത്? ബിക്കോസ് ദ യുണൈറ്റഡ് സ്റ്റേറ്റ്സ് ഹാസ് സെഡ് ടു ക്രിട്ടിസൈസ് അവർ കോണ്ടക്ട് ഇൻ ഗുവാണ്ടനാമോ ബേ constitutes an unfriendly act. Yes. So if you criticize what we are doing, then you become our enemy. So British government will not say anything about that. You are either with us or against us. So Blair shuts up. So the Prime Minister of Britain was Tony Blair. He also is not able to say anything about Guantanamo Bay. The invasion of Iraq was a bandit act, an act of blatant state terrorism, demonstrating absolute contempt for the concept of international law. സദ്ദാം ഹുസൈനെ കൊല്ലാൻ വേണ്ടി ഇറാഖിൽ കയറിയപ്പോൾ അത് ഒരു ബ്ലേറ്റൻറ്റ് ബാൻഡിറ്റ് ആക്റ്റ് ആയിരുന്നു. ബാൻഡിറ്റ് എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ കൊള്ളയടിക്കുക, കൊള്ളക്കാരുടെ സങ്കേതം കയറി നിരങ്ങുന്ന പോലെ ആയിരുന്നു. So they did not show any respect for international law at that time. Absolute contempt, pucham. The invasion was an arbitrary military action inspired by a series of lies upon lies and gross manipulation of the media and therefore of the public. So before invading Iraq, they gave a lot of publicity that Iraq had a lot of weapons of mass destruction, nuclear weapons, missiles, all that, and they are a threat to international community. So they built lies upon lies, made publicity. Afterly they attacked or invaded Iraq. An act intended to consolidate American military and economic control of the Middle East. So they wanted to have some control in the Middle East, Arabian countries, masquerading as a last resort, all other justifications having failed to justify themselves as liberation. So ഇറാഖിനെ ലിബറേറ്റ് ചെയ്യുക അല്ലെങ്കിൽ അവരെ മോചിപ്പിക്കുക എന്നുള്ള ഒരു ഉദ്ദേശത്തോടു കൂടിയാണ് അവർ ചെന്നതെന്നാണ് പറയുന്നത്. മാസ്കുറേഡിങ്, ഒരു പുകമുറ സൃഷ്ടിച്ചു എന്നാണ്, ലിബറേഷന് വേണ്ടിയാണ്. ദാറ്റ് വാസ് ദ ജസ്റ്റിഫിക്കേഷൻ. മറ്റെല്ലാ ജസ്റ്റിഫിക്കേഷനും ന്യായീകരണം തോറ്റപ്പോഴാണ് അവർ ലിബറേഷൻ എന്ന എക്സ്ക്യൂസ് അടിക്കുന്നത്. ലിബറേറ്റിംഗ് ഇറാഖ്. A formidable assertion of military force responsible for the death and mutilation of thousands and thousands of innocent people. So as a result of America and Iraq war, millions of people were killed, many were mutilated, they lost their limbs. We have brought torture, cluster bombs, depleted uranium, innumerable acts of random murder, misery, degradation and death to the Iraqi people, and call it bringing freedom and democracy to the Middle East. So after bringing all that, killing, slaughtering people, millions of them, and Americans are telling that we brought freedom and democracy to Middle East. How many people do you have to kill before you qualify to be described as a mass murderer and a war criminal? So how many people are killed? They are killing millions of people. Still America cannot be labeled or called as a mass murderer, or America will not be called a war criminal. There is nobody dares to call them. 100,000, more than enough, I would have thought. So, how many people you need to kill as a kind of minimum qualification to be called as mass murder? Is it 1,000? More than enough, that's what he thought. Therefore, it is just that Bush and Blair be arraigned before the International Criminal Court of Justice. So, according to Harold Pinter, both Britain and America or their leaders should be brought to International Court of Justice, Criminal Court of Justice, because they have committed mass murders throughout the world in many countries, not just one country. But Bush has been clever. He has not ratified the International Criminal Court of Justice. So American presidents are very clever. അവർ ഈ ഇൻ്റർനാഷണൽ ക്രിമിനൽ കോർട്ട് ഓഫ് ജസ്റ്റിസിനെ അംഗീകരിച്ചിട്ടില്ല. So they have no problem. Therefore, if any American soldier or for that matter politician finds himself in the dock, Bush has warned that he will send in the Marines. So if any American or soldier is brought before the court, in the documents പ്രതിക്കൂട്ടിൽ നിൽക്കുക. അമേരിക്കയിലെ ഏതെങ്കിലും ഒരു സോൾജിയറോ പൊളിറ്റീഷ്യനോ പ്രതിക്കൂട്ടിൽ നിർത്തിക്കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ അവരുടനെ അവരുടെ പട്ടാളത്തെ അയക്കും. That means they will use force. But Tony Blair has ratified the court and is therefore available for prosecution. So the British government has ratified. അവരത് അംഗീകരിച്ചിട്ടുണ്ട് ഈ International Court, Criminal Court of Justice. So we can try them. They can be brought before the prosecution. We can let the court have his address if they are interested. So if they are on the address of British Prime Minister, he has given it here. It is number 10 Downing Street, London. So they can arrest the Prime Minister of England for war crimes. That's what Harold Pinter is suggesting here. Of course, that is only kind of saying it in a humorous sense. Not that anybody is going to do that. So with that, we have come to the end of the second part. Until we come back with the third part, it is goodbye. Thank you.